Everybody goes ahead and mutes their microphone real quick.
Mike, you can do that from the host site. You can mute everybody, whoever Jeff is.
Yeah, that's good asking Jeff to do it. So anyhow, and Jeff, you can go ahead and start recording. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. And I think we'll have a really interesting program. Mark Janzer will be the presenter, and he's already here, along with Julie. Julie's over there next to him somewhere. Hi, Julie. So real quick, I want to bring up a couple of things. I want to thank our new board, starting for the year. We have Jimmy Vance, NA5D is vice president. Dave Ely, N5EKW is our treasurer, back again. He couldn't, he's crazy. He just wants to have more crazy fun. Corresponding secretary, same thing there, Jeff Greer, W5JEF. And our new recording secretary, Mark McGrath. Hello, Mark. Right there a minute ago. Thanks for joining. N5VCM, just a few letters behind me on my call. Scott, KD5FBA, 2-year director. Thanks a lot for joining in. Sherry Horton, K5, KG5. I can't even read my writing. LMJ, 1-year director. Is Sherry here tonight? Well, I'm sorry Sherry didn't make it tonight, so we'll have to catch up with her later on. Last but not least,
she's in another meeting.
Okay. Rick Hiller, W5RH, on there for our other directorship and everything. So I want to thank all those folks for helping out with the club and going on from there. That'll keep things going. 2 other quick things I want to mention that I've been talking to John Stratton about possibly after the Plano Ham Fest closed its doors permanently, about us probably trying to jump in on July if possible. So far, that has not worked out at all, unless somebody happens to have an extra $20,000 in their pocket and would like to donate it for the Greater Houston Ham Fest. So if you do, I'll wait for your call right now. Okay, so nobody has an extra $20,000. Oh, maybe next time. But yeah, I found a venue, but it was going to be a fairly expensive location. So
the Dayton Ham Fest might have 20 grand. They just said they're not doing it.
Yeah, well, I'll have to call and ask them, see if they won't just give it to us. Who knows? Maybe that might be a possibility. So
I'm still with the lottery check.
Do what? I lost you, Scott. Say again.
Said he was waiting on a lottery check.
Okay. Anyhow, the last thing I want to mention is something that we just started this year. We have a training session time once a month at Bayland Community Center. The times are listed, the dates and time is listed on the BVARC website. It'll be coming up on the 23rd of this month, between 9 and 11 a.m. And this month is how to program your HT, whether analog or digital or whatever. Rick Broussard will be there. And if you'd like to come out and bring your handheld, he's not going to program it for you necessarily, but he will show you what to find and the software and go from there. So 9 to 11 on the 23rd at Bayland Community Center. Each month we'll have a program there of some kind. Mark Janzer is the program coordinator or training coordinator. So if you'd like to use that time period for something you're interested in, get with Mark and he'll get it scheduled. But we have that time period for the whole year. So 2 hours, the 3rd Saturday roughly of every month. So next year we'll probably go with 4 hours if we can keep it filled.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
So at the bottom of the screen, we have a new extra ham, K5MGJ down at the bottom. He got his license 5 days ago from you guys. Great job.
Hey, thanks very much for letting me know.
Yeah, he's my neighbor, so I'm trying to HF mentor him.
Okay, did you say KI5MKU?
Yeah, Corey, speak up, Corey.
Yeah, that's me. I don't have my camera working quite right this second, but yeah, just got that certified a few days ago in the ULS. Pretty happy about that.
Corey, congratulations for joining this weird bunch of people.
Thank you so much. I'm trying to get Terry to go ahead and try to pass his test next month. See if I can help him out with that. I know he's been
That'll
in
be
this
a
for
good
very
thing.
long time.
Again, congratulations, and like I said, just remember, a lot of us will be in the home pretty soon. So.
All righty. Well, I'll try to keep this. I'll try to keep this hobby alive.
Aye, that's what we need. Anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and unless anybody has anything else, going once, going twice.
Announcement.
Go ahead, Rick.
I just wanted to bring it up that Winter Field Day is the last weekend of this month. If you go to the News Blast, which comes out every Monday, hopefully, if Rick gets his crap together every week, there's a link in there for the Winter Field Day Association, and on there is all the rules and regulations and everything. But it's just like the field day we have in June, except that no FT8 and no FT4. So they give an explanation of why that is, but every other mode. But Winter Field Day, you can do it by yourself. You can do it in a group. We can do it as we can put in a club score, even though you do it individually, just like we did at Field Day in June. So we are going to have a little bit of a inner club or inner club competition. But I haven't put that together yet. But in the next week, I'll send out a couple of things on the reflector about it. So, but it's just fun to get on the air, especially you, the new guys with the KI5 calls and the KGs and KFs and E's. It's a great time to get on the air because there's lots and lots of people. So anyway, thank you, Mike.
We'll have some awards for those too. Isn't that right, Rick?
Who has those? What?
We'll have some awards for the input.
Yeah, I think so. Just like we did in the June, which we have winners of those awards, but we hadn't given them yet. So
right.
Blame it on COVID.
Yes. Last but not least, I forgot about this one thing. Looking for some people to help with the newsletter on production. This is about 4 or 5, maybe 6 hours a month of folding, stapling, and mutilating the newsletter. So if you'd like to help out, please drop me an email. We'll get you set up to do it once a month toward the end of the month, right after it gets printed by Office Max, Office Depot, and get it processed from there. So if you'd like to help out, please let me know. We're looking for some folks for sure for that. Okay. Any other announcements? No.
Yes.
Go ahead.
This weekend is Support Your Parks Weekend. So if any of you want to get on the Parks on the Air website, register, and there'll be probably over 100 different parks being activated throughout the weekend, so you can get your feet. Also, this weekend is the single sideband North American Party.
Okay, great, Scott. Any other announcements? No other announcements. We're going to go ahead and shift it over to Mark Janzer, W5 MJG.
No, K5MGJ.
Well, it was close. I got a 5 right.
Yeah.
I got the 5 right.
But as long as you got the 5 right, that's all that counts. So, okay. Well, I'm going to try and share my screen and kind of get started here. And let me know if you cannot see it. But can you see it?
Can now.
Can
Can
now?
now.
I see it.
Okay, okay, great. Okay, so to get started, very basic title about BVARC and the Galveston Naval Museum ships. Some may recall years ago, the area at Seawolf Park and the ships used to be called the Undersea Warfare Center. And a couple years back, they changed it to the Galveston Naval Museum. And there's a new logo and so on. And I'll show you what that at the end. But the ships themselves are located on Pelican Island. If you haven't been out there, and Pelican Island is kind of directly north of Galveston Island. And if you were to go down there, you'd go down to Galveston on 45. 45 kind of trails into Broadway to 51st Street. 51st Street takes a bridge across to the island. And you follow a road for another, I think it's almost 5 or 6 miles to the actual park site. It's about an hour's drive, a little over an hour's drive from Houston. And we can talk about that a little bit more when we have start talking about what we've got planned for the coming year. But the Galveston Naval Museum, oops, there we go, comprises the 2 ships, the USS Stewart and the Kavala. And I'm going to first talk about both of these ships as well as the Selma, and then go into a little bit of the history of what the club has been doing out there. So the Stewart is a Edsel class destroyer escort. It was named after Charles Stewart, who was the first admiral of the U.S. Navy. He had 3 other naval ships named after him. This is the 3rd one that was named for him. He had commanded the Constitution, the tall ship, the Constitution, during the War of 1812. And again, this particular destroyer escort is named after him. Up on the upper right-hand corner there, you can see the flags that identify the ship. They would hoist those flags on the yardarm. And their original call sign for the ship was NFKP. More news on that towards the end of the presentation. So, Edsel class destroyer escort, it was designed to basically escort convoys of merchant marine ships or any other type of escort needed typically across the Atlantic between Europe and the States. This particular ship was built in Houston by the Brown Shipbuilding Company. Brown Shipbuilding did a lot of World War II ships over the years, and this is one of the ones that they did. There were other destroyer escorts that were made not only by Brown but by other companies, and so it's fitting that the Stewart is here back in Houston and Galveston. Its service from when it was launched in 1942 to 1947 was basically patrols and convoys stretching from Italy to Pearl Harbor. It made one transit through the Panama Canal towards the end of the war, and came back and was used a lot for training purposes after the war. And then she was put in a reserve, not taken out of commission, but put in reserve in several different places. She shuttled around a few times between Charleston, Norfolk, and Orange, Texas. And then her name was struck from the Navy list on 1972 and donated to Texas in 1974. And she's one of the only 2 remaining destroyer escorts. One is still in service, and I believe it's a South American country that's using it within their Navy. I forgot the name of the country. And it's the only Edsel class destroyer escort in the United States. So here she is at the time that she was about to be put into the water. And I find this picture very interesting because you can see the screws down below the ship. I didn't realize how exposed the axles were for the propellers, and kind of how the rudder worked and such. But this is what she looked like just before she got put into the water. The hull was basically complete, but the superstructure was not ready yet. Here she is in the water. This picture was taken, I believe, in the 50s. And you can see the layout of the ship. And those that have been on the ship are very familiar with the layout. Most of the superstructure is all still there. The stack, and you can see where the bridge is. This is an open bridge ship. There is a bridge that is enclosed below that you can go into, but generally the ship was manned and steered from the open bridge at the very, very top of the ship there, forward of the yardarm. Take a quick opportunity here to tell you where we've got antennas right now. We have a VHF antenna that's mounted, I believe, right about here. And we've got that running down, piece of coax running down into the radio room. And then during museum ships, last couple of years on this yardarm, we've been hoisting a remotely tuned loop that John Oxon put together, and it's worked remarkably well. We've gotten a lot of our cues off of that loop antenna, and the coax from that goes into the radio room. The radio room is located below this top deck, right behind the enclosed bridge right here. And then I've got some other pictures to show you where we've mounted other antennas during the museum ship's time. But basically, that's what she looks like, and that's one of the rare pictures I've seen of her, or she's actually in the water. Okay, here she is in mothballs. She's the, if you see the two destroyer escorts in the middle of the picture, she's the one on the right. And you can see where the machine gun nests are, where they're covered with domes and such, and the yardarm and so on. I believe this picture was taken in the 60s, I believe. And then back in the 70s, she was decommissioned and put on landlocked at Seawolf Park. So you're seeing the entire limits of Seawolf Park, where you also see the Kavala and the park itself. There's basically the Galveston Parks Board operates the entire park, and they have kind of a no rent lease for the museum ships. But the Parks Board generally controls all of this land and what's going on there. The museum ships, the Galveston Naval Museum, handles the maintenance of the ships, the how people enter, what they pay for. Some of that money that goes for entry fees goes directly to the maintenance of the ships. Some of it goes towards just maintenance of the park area as well. Most of the funds that come for the Stewart come from, there's an EDSO class Veterans Association, and they come down once a year and do a major week-long tasking where they'll do some fairly major renovations on the ship. Okay, we'll go on from there. Going on to the Kavala. The Kavala is a Gato-class submarine. Again, on the upper right, you see what her flags look like and her original call sign of November Bravo Papa Sierra. And she was, the keel was laid down in 1943 in March, and then she was launched in November of 43. And then after all of the good guts were added in, the electronics and the launching mechanisms and command center items. She was commissioned in February 1944. Some of the history, I'm not going to go through all of that, but after the war, when she was decommissioned, she was then retrofitted to a different type hunter-killer submarine, and then had a couple of missions, and then was further decommissioned back in '68, placed in reserve, and then was finally donated to Texas in January in 1971. She was awarded a Presidential Unit Citation and 4 battle stars for World War II service. Some of the things that she had done, she was the luckiest sub in the service because of her outstanding performance. She logged 90,000 miles and 570 dives and sank 34,000 tons of Japanese shipping. Her greatest sinking during her 6 war patrols was the aircraft carrier Shukaku, and Shukaku had participated in the attack on Pearl Harbor. So that was a huge sinking for her. In fact, she had, according to the story, she had located the carrier and the convoy that the carrier was with, and had located it, but she was told not to engage. Although she was, it could very easily had gone and sunk it at that time, but she disengaged, left for a couple of days, and got to a point where she could communicate back the location of the convoy. And on having sent the location of the convoy by radio to the command, they then sent her back, and she engaged the convoy and sunk the carrier. She was also present in Tokyo Bay in September '45 for the surrender signing aboard the Missouri. Cavallo was decommissioned in '46, returned to service in '51 as the hunter-killer, and then, like I said, in '71, delivered to her permanent berth at Seawolf Park on Pelican Island. She serves as a memorial to submariners lost in World War II. Here she is when she was first put in from her dry dock back in 1943. And then this, before she was retrofitted to a hunter-killer, this was the original conning tower. The conning tower now is fully enclosed, but at that time, this was the type of conning tower that they had. It was fairly open. You can see the periscopes. You can see that there's a mast there for the wire antenna. And again, it's very, very different from what she looks like now. I'm not quite sure when this picture was taken, but this is during wartime. This is in the 40s. And this is another picture of her. I believe she's second from the left, and you can kind of see how the conning tower looks in this picture. But this is the photo of them lining up in Tokyo Bay on surrender day. And then after the retrofit, you can see this is pictures dated 1953, and shows the pretty much what you see of her now. You can see the conning tower is enclosed. The fire control center for the sub is in the lower part of the conning tower, where you see where it says 244. There's actually 2 bathyspheres, or 2 pressure holes for the sub. The main pressure hull that extends, as you know it, from stem to stern. And then there is another one that is above that deck, in that lower part of the conning tower, and that was the fire control center, and where you'd see where you'd look through the periscope and so on. I'll show you a little bit more about that a little bit further on. This again, this is I believe this is near Norfolk, And this is latter part of the 50s. I think this is very close to when she was decommissioned. This may have been one of the last voyages. And you can see, especially here, again, the conning tower, and you can see the VHF antennas that are, they're on an angle pointed towards the rear, but you can see those there as well as the one periscope. There's actually two periscopes, but the one there that's sticking up.
Mark,
Yeah.
that picture is the turn into the Elizabeth River as you make the turn out of the channel into Norfolk Naval Base, just so you know.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, and then this is showing in 1971, where she was first not dry docked, but put into place. She hasn't generally moved from that point, so you can see, based upon where the park is, how the park is laid out now, that the Stewart is in a new filled area to the right of where the Kavala is. You know, the park wasn't developed then as it is now. So you can see there's been quite a bit of work since 1971 done to develop the park. And again, a lot of fill has gone in for that particular area, for both ships, the parking lot, the fishing wharf, and so on. And this is a picture within a month or so after Hurricane Ike. You can see where the Stewart had floated slightly and went off to the side, or just keeled over a little bit to one side, and the damage to Seawolf Park as a result of Hurricane Ike. That's since been straightened. You can also see even on the Kavala where the stairway, bottom of the stairway is hanging loose. So, you know, a lot of that area just basically got swept away, again, from the hurricane, and things became disengaged. So as you know, that's all been fixed now, and there's been a lot of improvements in the park, and there's still planned to be further improvements, but they've been delayed for a variety of reasons. The other ship that is not part of the museum, the Galveston Naval Museum, but deserves mention, and it is also one of the ships that we activate as part of Museum Ships Weekend, is the SS Selma. And the SS Selma is a concrete ship. On the left picture, you see where she was first launched, and you can compare that picture to the one on the right where she was intentionally sunk in the Galveston Channel. So briefly, the Selma, when it was sunk there, they had hoped to use it for other uses: fishing pier, pleasure resort, oyster farm. It does remain important to scientists who continue to study aspects of concrete construction. I'm going to go into that a little bit on the next slide. It's within sight of Seawolf Park, and 12 of the ships were completed for use for shipping during World War I. This was, I believe, one of the last ships that was completed. It was launched the same day Germany signed the Treaty of Versailles. So the ship never really served during the war. It was intended to, but it was placed into service as an oil tanker in the Gulf of Mexico. So in that 1 year that she was out on the water, she hit a stone jetty in Tampico, Mexico, and ripped a 60-foot large crack along her hull. And both under air pressure and however they were able to keep her afloat, she was towed back to Galveston for repairs, and they weren't able to repair her. There's no one really able to take a concrete ship, be able to fix the crack in the hole and still maintain integrity for, you know, the pressure that would have been required to keep her afloat. And so they, after several attempts, and it was sitting around for several years, they decided, okay, well, we're just going to have to rather than deconstruct it, we're going to go ahead and dig a trench out in the bay and sink her in that trench. And so they hauled her out there, and on the process of hauling her out there, she hit a sandbar. It took her 2 weeks to get her off the sandbar. Then she hit a dredge line. It took some time to get her off the dredge line, and they finally got her to the trench and sunk her in the trench. And so she is actually sunk in the trench where she is right now.
Hey, Mark,
Yeah, go ahead.
I fish around that boat, flounder and trout, and I'll be glad to volunteer my boat to drop off hams on that deck whenever the museum ship is working.
It would be fun to do that. I'm going to go into this a little bit more. I've actually got more slides of the Selma than I do of the other ships. But the ship is actually privately owned.
Oh.
And I've met the owner several times. And they do not permit anyone to board the ship because it's not safe.
Oh yeah, it's very, very bad.
It's very, very bad shape. A lot of the concrete has spalled off. There's a lot of exposed rebar, and the deck is not what it used to be. In the many years that it has been sitting there, the deck especially has gotten to be in pretty bad shape. Two items of interest after it was put down or put there was during Prohibition, the federal agent seized a bunch of liquor and hauled it out there, and because they had no place to dump it, and they actually dumped it in the tank holds of the Selma to get rid of it. And so they busted it up in the hold of the vessel. The other thing that I don't have a slide for or a bullet point on was also the Masios were the mob family on the island and ran all the gambling. And they had several, like 3 or 4 different clubs that they ran. And in part of the raids to shut down those clubs, feds confiscated a bunch of one-armed bandits, slot machines, and they had no place to take them to. So they took them out to the Selma and sunk a bunch of these slot machines between the Selma and the shore. And in the process of doing that, a day or so later, a few of them floated back up and we're floating around in the channel. But not only are there old liquor bottles in the hold that maybe some are intact, maybe not, but there's also rusted old one-armed bandits on the shore side between the shore and the ship. So when the Selma was built as concrete, it was a light aggregate. It was a special process to be able to build it and build that hull. And they had a tough time in placing the concrete so that it would be uniform. In other words, when you put concrete down, if the mix is soupy, the aggregate would all fall to the bottom. It wouldn't be suspended within the cement, so that when the cement cured, it would hold the aggregate in place. And they had this problem, especially with this lighter aggregate, because they didn't know how to work with it best. And so while they were building the Selma, they came up with a method to try and get uniform mixes of concrete. And they developed a test called the slump cone, or the slump test, which is ASTM 143, which is used for widely today. I use it very, very often when we're doing construction pours for concrete. Not only just flat work, but structural work. Any concrete that shows up at the site, and you want to, before you place it, make sure that it's not soupy and it's holding to the specification. They will do a slump test, which is basically a truncated funnel filled with concrete. Funnel is removed, and then the concrete slumps, and you're looking for a particular slump. If it slumps more than a certain amount, it's too soupy, and the concrete will not cure properly. You know, the aggregate, it's not going to stay in, it's suspended in the cement, and you'll get a bad placement. So another thing that happened on the Selma was a fellow by the name of Frenchie LeBlanc, who is a hermit, and he decided to live aboard the Selma, which he had owned. He bought it for $100, and it's actually in the deed records of the Galveston County. So he had proof that he owned it, and he tried to put an oyster farm in the holds. It didn't prosper, so he added chickens and goats and fed them, and they did fine. And so he sold off chickens and goats from time to time to supplement his income. He also used it as a fishing pier. He would charge admission to fishermen who would come out to the boat and fish off the deck. And so that was part of his income. And so he was a pretty colorful character. He's buried on Galveston Island after he passed away. And was, you know, again, fairly well-known guy. Now, a reporter from the Galveston Daily News, Christy Mitchell, had saw opportunity to publicize the island, and so he staged a hermits convention on the Selma with Frenchie as the host. And the hermits, happy hermits, turned out in large numbers. They had free beer. They, in fact, were filmed by both Fox Movie Tune and Universal News. I've tried to find those. There is archives that are online for both Fox Movie Tone and Universal News. And for neither one have I been able to find that particular thing. They had a lot. This is the same year that they did the Happy Hermits Convention as the year that the Texas City explosion happened in 1947. And so they were trying to get positive publicity later in the year, and this is one of the things that they did in Galveston. After LeBlanc, after Frenchie died in '64, ownership of the Selma passed through several people before Pat Daniels, who was the editor of the Galveston Daily News for many years. He and a friend of his, William Bill Cox, formed a corporation to operate or, you know, maintain a deed on the Selma. And again, that same deed is on the Galveston County deed records, and you can go to it and see it. And after Pat died, Bill Cox inherited it, and then subsequently his son, Ken Cox, became the owner, or actually the CEO of the Selma company after his father's passing. And he's been carrying the torch for the Selma for about I think it's been about 10 years now since his dad passed away. Anyways, I've met Ken several times. Every year they have a party where they celebrate the birthday of the Selma. And this is a quick article. I'm not going to go through the entire article. We'll post the a PowerPoint to the site, and you can read through it. But generally, the 100th year anniversary of the Selma was in June of 2019, and I did go to that party and announced about the Museum Ships Weekend event and so on. And they talk about the various things that happened to the Selma. It is as well as it being the honorary ship of the Texas Army. And Ken tries to promote it as best he can. Basically that once a year thing.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, go ahead.
You started this by saying we activate it. So if nobody can get on it, how do you activate it? And I'm curious.
The way the rules for Museum Ships Weekend work is that first we had to establish that the Selma was a museum ship. And I'll show you that in a later slide, okay? Once we established it as a museum ship, the rules state that as long as you're within sight of the ship, you can activate it. Because
I thought you would put somebody in a boat there. I was gonna offer to sit in the boat all day and run an antenna and a radio.
and we could do that. I mean, I'm not at all opposed to doing that.
I got the antenna in the boat. Somebody figure out how to ground it.
Great. Well, hey, you just, you know, hook up jumper cables to the steel on that rebar. That'll ground it. But in any case, that's how we activate it. We actually don't put a person on the ship. As long as we're able to see the ship from where we're operating from, we're considered to be legal, if you will. And I'll get into that a little bit more as we get into the museum ships. Okay, and this is a slide that established the Selma as a museum ship for Museum Ships Weekend. There has to be some kind of documentation to show that it is a museum ship or a historical ship. And what does that for the Selma is that there is a historical marker posted in Seawolf Park. And so I went out there and took this picture that shows not only the ship, but the historical marker, and sent that into the Battleship New Jersey people. And as a result of that, we were able to establish this as a, quote, legal ship, museum ship that could be counted on for QSOs for that event. Okay, going into Museum Ships Weekend, typically the first weekend in June, it's hosted by the Battleship New Jersey. They basically log in all of the different ships that are part of the weekend. There's usually upwards of, I think, 80 or 90 ships. I think it's gotten up to 100 in some years. And they're worldwide. It's not just ships that are in the United States. There are several in France. There's several in Spain. There's a couple of Russian ships, several Italian ships. I don't recall if there are any South American ships at all. There's some from Australia. There's some Japanese, and predominantly it's United States naval ships. And so for our operation, we have 3 ships, and for the Kavala and for the Stewart, we've rigged it with the museum ships people that we are able to get with 1 QSO to a station that's operating for either the Stewart or on the Stewart or on the Kavala. They get 2 points. So it's a 2-for-1 because we're using 1 call for both ships. Okay.
Mark John.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Can't hear you, John.
John, I can't hear you.
You muted yourself, John.
Okay. Interrupt me when you come back.
The host can unmute him. There you go.
All right, am I talking now?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So speaking of qualifying and improving it, a member of BVARC has activated the 2 ships from the Texas City explosion. I forget what their names are, but I think they have the Bell and the Anchor or something like that by the Texas City dike. And they are indeed 2 of the quote ships that are recognized if it is ever activated.
Yeah, Michael Mansour does that, and that's the Liberty ships. And I've actually got a mention of that in a further slide a little bit further down. Yeah, and he's done that the last 3 or 4 years, I believe.
What about the Texas?
The Texas has been activated and it has been part of it. I forget which club had done that. I know that BVARC had tried to activate the Texas, and this is going back into the 80s and early 90s, but they were unable to do it because of just the bureaucracy on the ship.
Probably a Harris County club.
But later on, they were able to activate it, and there had been some work done in the radio room. And again, I don't remember the name of the club that had activated it, but it hasn't been active for the last, I think, about 3 years now, because of the renovations and because of what they were doing on the Texas.
Mark, somebody in the Katy Club, I believe, coordinating that.
Okay.
I can't remember his name right now. Mike somebody.
Okay.
Mike
and-
Brennan.
Yeah. Thanks, Sherry. And you're right. They haven't been activated in a couple of 3 years because of the work going on there. And at one point, I guess the flooding started and everything. They got everybody off, and they couldn't do anything. Yeah, I've talked to Mike about it. And they actually got some radio equipment in. Just a side note. Mike was telling me about this a long time ago. They actually found some old radio equipment in a crate that was exactly what would belong on the Texas, and they got that shipped over there and installed. I don't think it's working, but they got it installed. Anyhow, back to you.
Okay. And just adding on to that, for Texas, there are at least 8 ships in Texas that participate, and that did include the Battleship Texas, our 3 ships, the Alyssa participates, the Lexington participates down in Corpus. The Liberty ships that Michael Monsoor has done in a few previous years. Also in Fredericksburg, as inland as Fredericksburg is, there is the Pacific Naval Museum, or the Museum of the Pacific War. And they have a PT boat in that museum, and they actually operate from there. One suggestion I'd have on the Texas is that if it's within sight, they could do it from the park and just set up in the park as long as they can see the ship. They don't have to operate on the ship, because that's what BVARC had done for a few years. I'm about to get into that. So some of the history of BVARC's activity was that, and I got all this pretty much from this point on, I've gotten this from the newsletters. In 2008, Bill Stone had, who was a special events coordinator for BVARC, had contacted the ships about doing a weekend event in 2009. He started doing that in 2008, and they gave him a shout back and said, well, why don't you just go ahead and do it now? And so in an ad hoc way, we're just very short notice, they set it up. And the first museum ships weekend officially for BVARC was in 2008. Now, there was other activity that BVARC had done going as far back as in 88 and 89, and they had outings to Seawolf Park with fishing and picnic trips. And these trips left Houston on a Saturday morning and returned in the afternoon. And again, this is somewhat similar to museum ships, where we come down and we'll be at the park either for the duration of the weekend, for however long we have shifts for the volunteers that do operate. But this is the first time, and you can see from the pictures, again, these are from the newsletter, of that very first time in 2008. So going on in 2009, they didn't operate on the ships. They operated off in the park again. And then 2010, 2011. 2011 was notable in that they got written up in the AMSAT journal, and they had done quite a bit of satellite communications. So for, I think, 2009, 2010, and 2011, they had done satellite work. And used communications with satellites for those, at least for those 3 years. And that's where they had, again, had gotten written up on the AMSAT journal. Then,
Mark?
Go ahead.
Could you speak to the propulsion on these ships?
Propulsion?
Yeah.
The destroyer escort was basically just diesel engines, twin screws. The engine compartment in the Stuart presently has just recently been remediated for asbestos. They didn't let the public into it because it was full of asbestos.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the ship is full of asbestos, but to be able to get power turned on to the radio room, I had to go in there in the engine room and to the main switch gear and turn one of the switches on to be able to extend power to the radio room. For 1 year at least, we didn't know how to do that, and we couldn't get power in the radio room. We were running off of like a little lighting circuit that was like 10 or 15 amps, and we kept blowing fuses until we figured that out, until they worked with us to get a good chunk of power. We probably can't run more than 100 watts in the Stuart because, again, the power is not that great. It is provided by a landline, and it's basically for lighting purposes more than anything else, except for the back part of the ship where they do bunks, and there's a kitchen back there and so on, and it's where we operate. And I'm getting to that here where you'll see that compartment. But for the Kavala had diesel engines as well, and the diesel engines charged batteries so that when they did dive, they were switched over to electric motors to turn the screws. So the engines are obviously still there. They take up a good chunk of the middle part of the ship. The batteries were in lower compartments. I'm not even sure if the batteries are still in the Kavala. That area is not open to the public. I've never gone down that bottom deck or that lower part of the main deck to see what's down there, but we probably could get down there one time, but it's kind of nasty down there. I hope that answers your question. And then
I was surprised to find that the DE was diesel, not steam.
for the Edsel class,
Yes.
no, it was diesel. It was not steam, because again, this is World War II, so they had gotten to where they were off, no longer using steam. Now the Selma was probably on steam.
I know the Texas, it was a big steam engine.
Well, the Texas was built before World War I.
Sure.
So a lot of ships then were on steam. But again, the Kavala and the Stuart are World War II ships. And so they were beyond the steam stage at that point.
Mark, John,
Go.
I might be confusing it with something else, but didn't one of the ships actually get the engines activated a couple of years ago?
Last year, there's more than one engine on the Stuart, and one of the graduate students at the A&M Marine Academy went and tore down one of the engines and rebuilt it, and they had it going last year at one of the engines. So that was quite an accomplishment. That was also part of the Edsel Veterans group funded that. But yes, they did get that running, and all it does is run. It can't possibly be connected to anything, being that the screws, if they're even there, are buried in the dirt.
Okay.
Okay. Going on, 2012, again, Bill Stone is still operating, Cookie, and a few other guys. Again, this is where we're actually on the ships operating. So the picture that you see with Bill is on the Stuart, and then I believe that one picture with Cookie is on the Kavala. So that is the Kavala radio room, and then on the left is I'm trying to make sure I got that right. Yeah, the one on the left is Bill in the radio room of the Stuart. And then obviously there is some operations outside the ship in the park. There was a covered gazebo there, or a covered canopy there. It's not there anymore. So that's the write-up. They had 720 contacts that year. I think there was one year where they had gotten up to 900. I think I can later slide. 2015, Cookie had headed that up. It was a lighter experience. They didn't have as much radio contacts that time. It was, it was a good outing. In 2016, the following year, was actually the first year I was involved with it. We had to cancel because we had rain and we had about 3 or 4 feet of water on 51st Street and we couldn't get across to the island. And so we had to cancel, but Michael Mansour was able to continue to operate in Texas City on the dike for the Liberty ships. And that's what his setup looked like down at the down on the right hand side there and the left hand side. Those pictures are the Texas City operation. Okay. 2017, this gives you a better handle on how we're currently operating. In the back part where the bunks are on the Stewart on the right hand side, they have overnight sleepovers for scouts and anyone, and they have a kitchen in there. And so 2017 was the first year where we actually operated from there. We used the power that was in there. This is an air-conditioned space. The radio room where you see Mike Tiers in the radio room of the official radio room is not air-conditioned very well. The air conditioning we do have in there doesn't keep up, and it gets really, really warm in there. And so we can only operate in there in the evenings or early in the mornings, and then it just gets too hot starting, say, from 9 or 10 o'clock until 5 or 6 in the afternoon. But we have extended some lines and into that radio room for external antennas. The same thing holds true on the right-hand side. We're in the back part of the store. We've found a place where we can extend transmission lines through the deck, and now we're able to run anywhere from, I think we've got 3 lines, 3 coaxial jumpers that go through the deck, and we can run 3 antennas down into this area. Okay, 2018, again, you see where we're operating, same place. And this year we used a spider beam, hex beam, and basically lashed it to the back part of the Stewart. And that worked pretty well. I was pretty pleased as to how that turned out. It was, we needed 2 or 3 people to be able to erect it, and it did take some time, but it did work out very well. We were pretty happy with that. The other antenna that John Noxon had rigged together, and that is owned by the club, is the remote tuned loop that we hoist in the yard arm. And that's been the workhorse. That has really, really worked really well. And most of the cues that we've had from 2017 through now have been on that. 2019, rather than the hex beam, we went and borrowed the Texas DX Society's stepper, vertical, and used it that year. That stepper is a very, very early model, and it's basically, we got it to function, but we were only able to function it on 1 band. Basically the stepping action, the motor and everything failed on us. And in fact, we're in the process, when I have time, to renovate that and put that back on the air. It works really, really well. What happened in 2018, we had 3 antennas, the hex beam, the loop, and someone had brought a buddy pole vertical. And the buddy pole vertical worked really well. And this, because of the ground plane, we felt would work really, really well too as a vertical. So we're going to continue to press on having a vertical out there, basically in a similar configuration. You can see Mike Tiers and Michael Mansour there in the picture. Let's see now. Okay. And for 2020, obviously it got canceled because of COVID, but 2021, we're planning things. One of the things that we want to do with the museum is public outreach. And here's a case where Michael and John Oxon were visited by some of the tourists that come aboard. And we'd like to do more interaction with the public. Again, not only exposing them to ham radio, but also to how things operated on the ships during World War II, and doing more CW and so on. The plans we have for working on both ships are in the Kavala. Right now, the Kavala has issues with its wire antenna. I'm about to show you that. In that upper right-hand picture, that's me trying to get into the conning tower. And you can see how close quartered it is in there to be able to get in there. We've not been able to get up there. I think Scott's daughter climbed up in there one time. Kelly climbed in there, and there was a huge noise. Something had broken away. It was get pretty rusty in there, and we got her out of there without anything else breaking or falling or whatever. But we do have issues with the conning tower. We'd like to not only repair the wire antenna, but rerun the transmission lines from the conning tower to the radio room. There are a couple of VHF antennas up there, and as well as using the wire antenna. And the big news is that the Naval Museum, through BVARC's efforts, has now gotten a club license, and that license of entity call is N5FKP. Jeff Greer is the trustee for it. And the original call for the steward is NFKP. Well, N5FKP is now what we're going to use for museum ships. We're going to redo the QSL cards, and we're going to use the Galveston Naval Museum's new logo, which you see there on the lower left. So we're going to be adding that. The design of the QSL cards is pretty cool. We're going to continue to maintain that, but we're going to go through some reformatting and how we're going to annotate a variety of things on there. And then lastly, this is the last slide, current condition of that wire antenna. The picture on the left is taken maybe a couple of years ago. The picture on the right, there is a webcam on top of the yard arm, and you can point it around. And this last summer, I was looking at to see what activity there was out there. I have been doing work on the conning tower, and you can see what happened to the wire antenna. The transmission line that comes out of the conning tower and gets basically bolted to the wire antenna next to the insulator, as you see on the left. Well, it's completely disconnected. You can see it's hanging loose. And then the bolts, the wire, the cable bolts are no longer engaging the wire. It's basically one's being used like a knot holding the wire antenna up against the insulator. And so that's a major thing that we want to fix. They are aware of it. I've got a procedure that I figured out to be able to bring the antenna down and retension it and bring it back. But this is also part of what I want to do, is to also re-establish the transmission line, rerun the transmission line, so that we can not only have one line going up there, but like 3 lines, so that we can not only do the HF, but also the VHF antennas and get them running as well. So that's the last slide I've got. And I'm about to open it up to questions or comments, but we are planning on doing some mobilization days within the next few months before June. The ships are open to the public. They are allowing it. Be aware that there is it's a little over an hour drive to get there. We'd want to start early in the morning. and then have a good half a day to 6 hours of work. And then we usually follow that up with some food, either barbecue or whatever. So, you know, you do get fed out of it. And we do have a variety of tasks, as well as the museum would like us to do some tasks as well. So we're trying to work hand in hand with the museum, not only help them out, but also, you know, to continue radio operations on board both ships. And at some point, either as docents or as radio operators, try and reenact what it was like working in those radio rooms during the war. So that's basically what I've got. Again, I'm going to open it up to questions, comments, and hope you found this interesting.
Hey, Mark, if you want it, I'll make a permanent donation to the event for a 6-band MFJ rotatable dipole that's sitting in my garage. I worked New Zealand on it last summer.
Okay, yeah, let's see how that looks. And see how we might be able to erect that. But yeah, that would be great. And anything that we can do, I think, especially that, a rotatable dipole, if we're able to erect it on the, especially the fantail. The fantail is close to where we have the jumpers going below decks. So
it weighs 13 pounds, and one man can put it up with one arm. And it's 2 meters, 82 meters, and all the way to 40.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, what we found is that 20 meters the last few years has been the workhorse. We've had some on 15, but most of the QSOs have been on 20. 40, we've tried some. We haven't got as much on it. It seems to have, at that time of the year, it seems to fall away. We've had 20 all the way up until 9 or 10 o'clock at night.
And again, if you can figure out a way to ground an antenna, maybe we could have a flotilla next to the concrete boat and operate for a day. It'll be hot.
I'd like to try and do that. That would be fun.
I'll donate the boat and that antenna, and we'll figure out. Somebody has to donate a go kit because I don't want my radio in the salt water.
Yeah. What would be fun is do that in October, just before the flounder run, because
yeah, I'll catch flounder while somebody works on the radio.
The flounder really hang out around some of that structure that's in the water. So yeah, that sounds great.
I'll send you pictures.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Gary, K5WFB.
Okay.
Okay, is it true? I think if I remember, some from the Battleship Texas has the mechanical computing equipment that they use for figuring out trajectory and other sort of mathematical solving of problems.
Uh-huh. The sub has that in the targeting. There's a targeting computer, mechanical targeting computer in the fire control bathysphere in the conning tower, and it's still there. I'm not sure how it actually works, but you can actually turn the dials on it and stuff like that, and it's pretty cool. On the Stewart, I'm not sure that it's there. They do have some radar rooms, and I think there might be something in that one of the radar rooms that might have a targeting computer in it. But the better example, and the one that looks really, really good, is the one that's in the Kavala, and that area is not normally open to the public. But you know, they usually give us the key to be able to get into the radio room and such. And it's a master key. And we've gone into the conning tower from time to time, and it's cool to see that. It's very, very neat. But that is there, and that's something to go look at.
Mark, John.
Yes, John.
There was some talk for a couple of years about possibly improving the air conditioning in the actual radio room in the Stewart. What happened to that?
Okay, currently on that, they replaced the window air conditioner with another unit. The Edsel class people did. we had proposed to fund a unit to remove that one and put like a two-stage system in, where we'd put the outside units up on the outside bridge, and then run that down somehow into the radio room and to the like the captains and the executive office space, because those are not air conditioned now. That's still kind of out there. It's been kind of delayed because the air conditioner that's in there now, they just put that in there. So there's not been a priority to do that from the museum's point of view. But that's still on the table. There's other things that I think that we want to get done to improve operability first, especially the Kavala. And right now we have an air conditioned space that we can use, bunk area.
Mark,
Go ahead.
just for John, we had planned to do that split unit many times, but we kept running into issues. One was the Galveston Parks Board and the group controlling the submarine and the ship and everything had changed. And we also at one point, because of BVARC's funding situations, because the Hamfest possibly going away, the funding kind of dried up a little bit. It's still on the table, as Mark says, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to do that. And plus, last but not least, that new air conditioner that popped up, it popped up. It was not, I don't think, Mark, you didn't know about that it was going to show up.
I know about it. It just suddenly appeared.
Right.
The old air conditioner didn't work very well at all. It had just aged because of the salt air and everything.
Right.
This new one does work, but any air conditioner in there is not going to keep up with the heat. I mean, we can only use it for so long before we get out of there.
I got a couple of things real quick I want to add. One thing that was brought up, and we did it before, it's about 5 years ago now. That was, we did a Texas Navy QSCL card to where I think Ron Litt coordinated this, or somebody else did, to where if you get our two ships, the Alyssa, the Lexington, it was like 5 or 6 ships, and we send them a certificate that they, this was on the side of Museum Ships Weekend, but if we were kind of coordinating it and passing this out. Ron should know more about that, but that's something in the future we need to look at, because we have so many ships in Texas, and we coordinated with the other groups, the Texas, our 2 ships, the Selma, the Alyssa, Lexington, Fredericksburg, and there's also a ship there in College Station. So that's a lot of ships, and a lot of people go after the certificates. So that was something we were trying to do, and it was done, but I think there's only about 5 ships then. Last but not least, I just got just a couple of days ago from the Galveston Naval Museum a fund request for the ships. So they're looking for funds to work on both ships, both the Selma and the Kavala. So if you want to donate a little bit of money, $39, you become a Lucky Lady Defender, and of course you get a baseball cap. $50 you can help pay for welding, and $100 pays for weather resistant paint. Of course, they'll take any money, preferably 10s and 20s and suitcases full. So,
Can you post that in the BVARC thing?
Yeah, please do.
yeah, I'll copy it and get it to the website.
Hey, Mark, Rick.
Rick, you muted. Say again.
Yeah, I have a question, but also have a comment about those certificates. Ron would be the one to know about that, but I designed and printed all those certificates. And I think maybe they were 18 to 20 that we did and sent out. and it was 6-7 years ago, something like that. So, but Ron was the main behind that. He was also the main one behind the latest, the 2-part QSL card. That
looks real good, and we're going to redo that with the call and with the logo and such. But yeah, those turned out really nice.
Okay, my question is that maybe I missed it, but why is it called Seawolf Park?
Good question.
There was another submarine or destroyer called USS Seawolf Park there. I think they moved it.
No,
I fished right beside it.
Yeah, well, wasn't there a monument to that Seawolf ship or something?
No, the Seawolf, I believe, and I'll look that up here in just a moment. There is a conning tower of a submarine.
Yeah.
That's still there.
That's not the Seawolf, though. The conning tower is from a nuclear submarine. I don't think it's the Seawolf. I could be wrong, but I think it's something else because the Seawolf Park has been named that for quite some time.
I thought sure there was a SS Seawolf there, but I guess not.
I believe there were several Seawolves over the years.
I believe there was a Seawolf class of ship.
Yes, there was.
Maybe that's
it. I believe it was a submarine too.
I'm not a naval guy.
David Hold, KE5ZZO, just commented on that. He mentioned also that Seawolf was a class of sub.
DRF's a submariner, so he'll know all this stuff.
So the Seawolf that the park's named for is SS 197. So that's that's that particular one. There have been several, including an SSN as well. I think the conning tower that's out there is the spade dog.
Yes, that's it.
That was our sister boat. I was on the Finback. Spadefish was our sister boat.
Right, and that's the one that is. It's the only thing there that's from a nuclear sub.
Yeah, you can't have a nuclear sub in a museum except for the conning tower. It's the only thing they'll give you. With one exception, the Navy keeps one. That's the original Nautilus. Yeah.
Okay, so Mark, the GalvestonNavalMuseum.com website says it was named after a World War II submarine lost at sea with 83 crew and 17 Army Rangers aboard.
SS 197, correct?
Yes.
I didn't see that, but maybe.
Sunk by our own Navy. Friendly fire. Anything else, Mark?
That's about all I had. I'm sure there are a few things that I could have had in there, but forgot.
One point, the computer you're talking about on the Cavala is called the TDC, torpedo data computer. But a technical question: when you rerun the antenna connections, do you have to use the same through hole, or can we use a different through hole?
There is a through hole now through the pressure hole that it's been drilled through, and they're keeping the weather out with great stuff, that expanding foam. I would prefer to reuse that one rather than drilling another hole in the pressure hole because of weather coming in.
So we could put better coax.
Yes.
It's got enough room to put better coax through it, and then we can reseal it simply as opposed to originally, let's put it, right? That makes sense?
Right. Yeah. I mean, original meaning more great stuff or something else that's, a little bit hardier. It's in a good spot. The hole's in a good spot where the weather tends to stay out. But there is a pressure hole and there's a cowl around the pressure hole, and so where this hole is located is pretty well protected from weather from the cowling. But we literally have to get under the sub, and it's not hard to get under the sub. But get under the sub and rerun it that way. That's where they actually put the air conditioners. It's below decks.
You mean under the conning tower?
Huh?
You're saying under the sub. I think you mean under the conning tower.
Well, what we have to do is we go through the conning tower and it extends along the main pressure hull through that along that cowling. And to get there, you have to go under the sub. You can actually squeeze your way under that cowling. I don't know whether there's a proper term for it.
One, two,
Oh, the superstructure.
Yeah, the superstructure.
one, two.
And you can get between the superstructure and the pressure hull. There's a lot of room in there. And we'd be able to then run it. And that's how the coax is run initially.
That's how it's run originally, as a matter of fact.
Mark, how long a run is that?
I measured it once, and I think it's about 45. Yeah, hang on. Between 45 and 55 feet to the hole, and then it's another 20 feet from the hole into the radio room.
Oh, so it's really not that long a run. Okay.
No, and what I did do is I procured a big roll of coax from
KBR.
Yeah, and so I've got that, so we can basically run as much as we need. I think I've got enough to be able to make at least 3 runs.
Okay.
And I'll foot the bill if you don't have the coax protector goo, the goo tape. And
Well,
we
I've
can
got
goo it up.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
got a bunch of goo tape.
Perfect, and we can make sure that it's will last as long as we can make it last, as it were.
One of the things I'm considering doing, and I'll put it out for discussion, is that there is a direct connection to that wire antenna from the transmission line. I'd like to put a balun in there, like a 9-to-1 balun, and I've got the materials to do that, and hide it inside the conning tower, and then run the line from the balun out to that those wire bolts on the wire antenna.
What's the standoff on the other side like? Where's it stood off on the other side of the wire?
Let me go ahead and share my screen again.
While you're looking, Mark, what's the diameter of the hole that's you're running your coax through?
Well, if you look at the screen right now, if you look at the left-hand side, somebody used a piece of PVC. That's PVC that's sticking out of the conning tower. And they just ran the transmission line through that. So it's really not a hole. It's basically all open. The hole that goes through the pressure hull is probably around, there's like 3 or 4 different pieces of wire going in through there. So that's a fairly large hole. I've never really chipped away at it, but I know where it's at. And I know it's sizable. So that's really the only constriction, is where we're coming into the pressure hull.
Okay.
I remember seeing when I was crawling around up there, it's probably just under 1 inch in diameter.
The one in the control room?
For the pressure hull, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
And you get 3 runs of 213 through there?
No.
What's going through there? 58 or something?
58.
58 RG8X, something like that.
Because I've got a spool of 58 right now that I can use, so I'm going to use the 58.
Oh.
Because we can't run more than 100 watts. Okay. I mean, the power systems just really can't stand running anything more than that. It'd be nice to run something bigger maybe, but I don't know that we're going to get much improvement.
How about RG8X?
Huh?
How about 8X? Would that give us any improvement?
It's less than 100 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is less than 100 feet. So, I mean, really, either one would probably work fine, the 8X or the 58.
So are we not allowed to operate from the park anymore?
Yes, we can.
Well, I thought there was, since they removed all those little shelters, not shelters, but the picnic table area, that we couldn't.
No, we can
set up
use
anything.
that. We just put up some pop-ups. We can put up some pop-up awnings and we can operate from there. There's no restriction from doing that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that's good. No, you could run a generator with power.
Hey, Rick,
Well,
guys,
what's nice about the Stewart though is that we're in air conditioning. I mean, we've got air conditioning in the bunk area, and
I
we've
know
got
when
stations in there.
I know when Bill Stone was doing, we had a vertical up and it worked pretty good.
Yeah, and that's what we found too, is that the verticals seem to work better. But I'm still overly impressed with John Knoxon's loop, the remotely tuned loop. That worked really well. I can't, I mean, both. I think those are the two best antennas out there.
Mark, the antenna that's on the conning tower, is that a resonant antenna or non-resonant? Oh, lost you, Mark.
Mark, you went mute.
Sorry, I just muted for a second. Okay, it's a non-resonant antenna, partly because it would have been operating in the war under different frequencies than the amateurs. So whatever we do with this wire, we just assume that it's random.
A comment.
Go ahead.
In the past, they depending on who the regime was, but I think they're all on the same page on this one. They wanted to maintain the spirit and appearance as it was originally. So I mean, we can't go mount a beam or anything up there. So that is what an antenna was strung operationally. So therefore, that's why that's used as is.
Right. Now, when we had the spider beam up, they had no objections for that, but that's not a permanent fixture. And then the stepper vertical was probably more better for looks while we are there, so that it doesn't look so obvious that it's amateur antenna. It's more complementary to what they're doing while we are there.
It's obvious to me that if you continue to use permanent structure, you're always chasing environmental issues.
Yes, that's true.
With all the salt water.
Yeah, that's true. Everything out there just rusts like crazy. I mean, it's a losing battle.
Anything else, Mark?
Questions, comments?
You operate all of them on one call sign?
No, 2 call signs. Reason for 2 call signs is that whether we're operating from the sub or from the Stewart, we just coordinate frequencies, or we'll have bandpass filters. And 2019, we had bandpass filters, so we could both operate on 20 meters at the same time. But it's a 2-for-1 QSO. So hence the 1 call for the Kavala and the Stewart, and then it has to be a separate call for the Selma. And we've been using W5MSQ, which is the Houston QRP group.
So I also have bandpass filters for every band I'll donate for the day for the process.
That would be great too. Yeah, the bandpass filters are really, really helpful.
Mark, if you would please, some of us that have worked out there before, let us know when you anticipate a work day.
Sure. Yeah, because I'm trying to figure out when would be a good time to go out. Lately, they've asked us to come out on a weekday, like on a Friday or something like that. They prefer that we not be working there on the weekend, because that's when the high volume of tourists come through. So that's a little bit of a change from what we've had in the past. Again, there is a kind of a new regime out there now. There's a fellow that's the site superintendent, has only been there since like October or November. So he's a new guy. So they've run through like 2 or 3 people in the last 2 years.
Will he allow me to tie my boat up to the next on the wall next to the ship?
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure no.
There's no place to tie up against a Stewart.
Yeah, okay. I've been right there, but I never tied up.
Yeah, there's no place to tie up next to the Stewart. And then the parking lot area there's no place around Seawolf Park to tie up.
No, it's all fishing. It's all fishing. It's just basically a big fishing pier. There's
Yep.
not, no, there's really no place to more. Yeah, I mean, if anything, you're anchored slightly off. I mean, there's a lot of people that fish off the Stewart, both wading and boat. It's a very, very good flounder area right off of the Stewart there, because they use, when they armored the shoreline, they used articulated block. And that articulated block, the flounder liked that because they treated it structural. So there's
I had a guy hurl a 4-ounce weight at me on his rod because I was too close to the fish they were fishing. It was like a rocket. Very good presentation, Mark. I'll send you an email and we'll communicate that other stuff, and I gotta go.
okay, that sounds good. Yeah, and then I figure within the next couple months we'll have a day out there.
I'll come by boat.
Okay,
Perfect.
Mark, really good job. Thank you very much. Really informative.
thank you.
I think
Thank
everybody
you very
appreciated
much,
it.
Mark. It was great.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
And before everybody goes,
Much appreciated.
again, congratulate Corey for passing his extra test. Moving on up, and don't forget about the training class on the 23rd, how to program your handheld. And I still need newsletter help for production of the newsletter. So if anybody's interested, please give me a call.
And before I forget, Rick, can you be sure to have that in the blast for the Rick Broussard thing for the 23rd?
I'll be getting with him and let him know about it.
Okay, great.
Already got it written down.
Okay. If nobody has any other comments, questions, or lies or anything, I guess we'll call it a night.